The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
WRC was '07,
Yeah.
and then that was the last of the battle shit that you did for
Yeah.
a while at that point.
Probably about 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, so fill us in on that gap, that 3-year gap where you just didn't really touch battle rap.
That gap we were doing the Pagan Ellipsis album. So we did One Way Ticket in that period. That came out in 2010. And then the reason I came back at that point was sort of to promote the album. So I did a match with Dirtbag Dan, who's he's from San Jose.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And I just wasn't in it. Like, my head wasn't in it. I ended up winning it, but I was just kind of like, it was my first time in that format where you're supposed to write. So it was kind of weird. Usually I could trust myself to be able to freestyle when, it gets down to the last minute and the pressure's on. You can count on yourself because you know you've done this 1,000 times.
Mm.
And for me, I was kind of getting to the event like, man, I don't even know all of my material inside out. Like, I've never had to memorize anything because I never used to use lines. Like, it's a completely different thing. Plus, it is the pit format and all that stuff does feel quite different when you do it for the first time.
Mm.
If you're going from being on stage and now you're surrounded by people and the light's even closer now. The light's like half a meter away from your head. It's like, shit, I don't know. This is not my world sort of thing. But, and I did one a couple of years later to promote my album. And I kind of just chilled for a while.
And then,
And I went to Canada and did all that shit.
so from, say, the WRC time to when you came back 3 years later,
Yeah.
had it pretty much just completely changed from freestyle to written?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Which I think was natural though, because at the time, like, that freestyle format was just getting played out. Like, this is sort of, when would 8 Mile have been? What year would that have been? Because this is probably 03 or something? Because that's Eminem show era.
I'd imagine somewhere in the mid-2000s.
So everything from like that period that movie came out is like 4 years of that sort of stuff. Oh no, it would have been even more by then. That's 2010. So another, 6 or 7 years. By that point, when you would get there and you'd see the first 2 guys go up, you'd be like, yeah, they're going to be in the final. Most of these other guys suck. It just wasn't interesting. And even the good guys might have a slow night and it's like, man, this whole thing sucks. Like, you could feel people losing interest in it for sure. So it made sense to go to the next thing, which was, guaranteeing the entertainment factor a bit more, which is writing.
And then, you came back in 2010 versus Dirtbag Dan.
Yeah.
Then what was the battle that you did afterwards that was to promote your release?
The next one was the Saurus, and that was in Adelaide. That was the only one I've had in Adelaide, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I remember that went down. I never actually went back and checked it out.
It was kind of like, just something wasn't right about it. I think the footage, the sound, it just wasn't, there's kind of no spark to it.
Yeah, okay.
He kind of lost a bit of steam and stuff, and he's, in my opinion, one of the best dudes to do it. So, but it didn't really click. I think maybe because the last thing I had on the internet for him to check, which was the only thing of that, was me kind of fumbling through the Dirtbag Dan one. So he probably thought it would be an easy night, and then I'd realized that I needed to kind of be sharper to take this new kind of era seriously. So, I was all the way the other way, like super clean, just ready to go.
And
Plus, I thought I would lose because that's the only time I've really been booked with someone where I was like, this guy is really, really doesn't miss. He's pretty consistent, and he's always at a really high level.
Yeah, man. Thesaurus, he's like, you'd have to say he's one of the best.
Yeah.
It's
a shame that wasn't interesting to watch because, that would have been a cool moment. But
So that was in Adelaide.
Yeah. At
Okay.
Fowler's, I think.
And then, so how long after the Dirtbag Dan battle did that one happen?
That would have been 2012.
Okay, so like a couple years.
Yeah, maybe 2012. And then I put out my first video. Yeah, it would have been 2012. And then I started to put out all my music videos for the first album. And, by that point, I was on a real good run with my mixtapes. So music started to kind of go up. And I had to kind of lock in on that and had a real good year with that. So that was all around that period.
And then is that around the time where you started the If the City Had a Voice?
The first one of those I did in 06, but it was terrible. So I don't really, I would have been, because then, 2006, and most of those songs would have been a year old. I would have been 15 when I was making that. And the technical aspect of it's good, but it's like you just know nothing about the world at 15 to talk about. So I can feel it just doesn't really connect. But I picked that series back up after the Pagan Ellipsis album, so probably 2011. I did part 2 and part 3 that year, and then I did part 4 after my album, and then 5 last year, and that's the last one.
And then when you started uploading those clips, is that when you started Purpose TV?
Yeah. That would have been, because I started to put out my own music videos, and I'll do behind the scenes videos and radio raps and shit like that. So it was just a good little haven because no one really, you got to kind of create enough of your own energy for people to get interested in anything, even other blogs or sites to share something. So I was like, I'll just start running and see how far I get. And that worked pretty well at the time. I mean, it was a lot easier to cut through on Facebook and things like that. Before Zucker fucked us. But, so, you could rely on, if you had 6,000 fans, they were all going to see the shit. Whereas now maybe 40 or 50 might, unless you give him $100. So, at that time, it was kind of a good pocket to cut through. A lot of people build up really big kind of fan bases in that time,
The lesson. 27. Oh, yeah.